Good afternoon. On here. Good afternoon. Apologize for about a minute late here. Real pleasure to welcome everyone to the July 13th, 2023 briefing. And this is our second briefing for the Thursday, July 27th meeting, 2023. We're not meeting next week simply because we're going to, a lot of folks are going to be out for the National Association of Counties meeting, and we will actually be off. Before we actually begin our briefing today, I do have a young man that I want to recognize who recently graduated from Winston-Salem-Forsyth County Schools. He's a mother here today, Mrs. Cloud and Joshua. If you all you can just come forward so we can see you for a second. Just mention that Joshua Cloud graduated in June of 2023 with perfect attendance through K through 12, not just 1 year, K through 12. And there are very few students that attain that in their educational career for 13 years worth of perfect attendance. We want to congratulate you and thank you for being here. And I met him out and talked to him a minute or two. He's at your North Carolina A&T? North Carolina Central? North Carolina Central. Eagles, I got it. He's a biology major. He's going to be a biology major and wants to be a dentist. So we look forward to seeing you with your dental jacket on here maybe in a few years. But thanks very much for coming and congratulations. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we may have a dental position open, so we could go ahead and get you signed up.
Might sign an early contract.
That's right.
Early contract for the dental work. All righty. Just two quick, somewhat announcements. One is not, one is. The announcement one is the fact that we will be, actually, most people will be attending the NACO annual conference next week. So we'll have no briefing or meeting next on July 20th. But we did have a long audit committee today, meeting for about an hour. And our Commissioner Limble, the chairman, I believe is going to give us a report from that audit committee.
We went over several things today, and one matter that we hadn't taken care of a little while back was didn't have a vice chairman for a little while. We actually had a member, but hadn't given the title yet, so we elected him today. Commissioner Whisenhunt is going to be the vice chair. That was vacated by Commissioner Elamine when he was here. So had a unanimous vote too, by acclamation.
3 people, yeah. Cool.
So done good. And we had an update on, it's called the Oracle Enterprise System Conversion. And I can't start to tell you what all of that entails. Is some conversion of, if I thought the manager could, he can explain it, but I don't know how long it would take him to explain it. So it's just some new system things that's been worked on for some period of time, and they're still not finished with it. Seems like it's, I figured out now what I guess wouldn't cut out for that kind of work. It's taken a kind of a toll on people. And also we recommend approval of the new contract for audit service by Sherry Becker for $45,000. Is that right number? And the manager, he can, by being under $50,000, he can sign off on it without the whole board having to vote on it. So, heard a lot of information today about that. So, everything's going along pretty good, and I guess when they finally finish this system, it'll be about I couldn't venture to say whether it's going to make things easier or not. Hope it will. More efficient. And I asked the manager a little while ago, I said, that's just really well, it's like government. Never-ending process. Keep on doing something. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair of the Audit Committee. Appreciate it, Commissioner Lovell. I'll make just one comment from that meeting. We have a lot of folks on staff, Terry Goodman, for example, as well as others who have spent umpteen hours on this conversion, and I think all of us want to thank them for their incredible dedication and hard work and staying the course. That's been, we're probably, I don't know, just listening today, if I was going to say how far along, we may be 2/3 through the woods and got about 1/3 left, and at least we're in a better place than we were, that's for sure, but I just want to thank them for all their hard work. All right, I think we're ready to review the agenda, actual agenda items. I'll turn the meeting over to our county manager, please.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, board members and staff and guests. It was a discussion item that I mentioned in the advance email this morning. I had been in conversation with Commissioner Woodbury. She is going to be attending an event and was hopeful that the board might consider a proclamation, which I think the chairman can actually do on behalf of the board, sort of outside any formal vote. This year, the entire year, is the 50th anniversary of hip hop, and I think there is an event that's going to involve the Ninth Wonder with Patrick Dowdett, and that you'll be attending, and she was hopeful to bring a proclamation just on behalf of the board to that event. I've given you a copy of it. Why don't I'll put that out there. Why don't when we finish up the meeting, I'll sort of ask if the board wishes to move forward with that. And so give you a chance to read it and think on it as a little bit as we move through the meeting. Does that work, Commissioner Woodbury, in terms of that? Okay. All right, very good. And so I'll go ahead and put that on the shelf for a second. We'll come back to it. We're going to take a look at the items for consideration for the July 27th meeting. I also mentioned in my advance email this morning that it's been a tricky, because of the way the meeting schedule fell, we actually had pushed back the meeting, the deadlines, and so when we presented the first items for consideration, we didn't have all of them, but so it gave departments a little more time, since there's really going to be one sort of formal opportunity in July. We kind of have a similar situation in August a little bit, and so we'll have a little bit of a break between the times we review them. So with that, we'll go ahead and dive into the items for the July 27th meeting. Kirk Erickson's going to come up. He has 3 items. If you want me to, Kirk, I'll sort of introduce them in a brief format, because I know that's always your first slide, but you got a public hearing on an amendment proposed by Planning and Development Services that amends a couple of the chapters around site distances. So I'll turn it over to Kirk Erickson to review that one.
All right, thank you, Mr. Manager, and again, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commissioners. Petitioner on this first text amendment is Planning and Development Services staff, and this would amend sections 3 and 11 of the UDO to ensure application of site and triangle provisions throughout the county. Just a little bit of background. In 2021, the North Carolina legislature adopted new language specifying that site distance measurements at intersections, including site triangles, which are a feature that we look for on site plans, must begin at the right-of-way edge or the edge of pavement for municipalities. Prior to the adoption of this language, municipalities could enforce site triangles through various methods. The current UDO definition for site triangles states that these site triangles should be measured starting at the edge of right-of-way, and this definition is currently city-specific. However, North Carolina Department of Transportation staff does use a similar metric when evaluating sites in the unincorporated Forsyth County jurisdiction. What this proposed amendment will do is amend the definition of site triangles to match what the state statutes call for, convert the existing city definition into a city-county definition, and replace a graphic that explains what we're talking about to users of the UDO. This is a graphic that illustrates kind of the change we're talking about. If you look at the left side, you'll see that the current way site triangles are measured is starting from the edge of right-of-way, which is further back than what the state mandates under the current language, which is on the right side of the slide, showing those red triangles right next to the pavement. In effect, this gives property owners more flexibility in how they use their property with locating signs or things of that nature, but it still maintains some clear distance when folks are pulling up to an intersection that they can still see what's going on in the So the state adopted language, as we mentioned, in 2021, and staff has already been enforcing this language for the last couple of years. As a result, this amendment isn't going to have any effect in terms of changes of what actually goes on when we review site plans, but this will put us in line with current state regulation. This item was heard by the planning board in February. There were no speakers in opposition, and the planning board unanimously recommended approval to the elected bodies. City Council adopted this in May 1st, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you.
Item 2 is also Eric's. It's a public hearing on an ordinance amendment proposed by Planning and Development Services. It's in regards to the Historic Resources Commission membership. Probably could have talked longer than that in introducing it.
How many presentations open today? All right, this is an amendment proposed by Planning and Development staff, and this would modify regulations to the HRC. Just as summary, the HRC is a 12-member board. You all appoint 5 members of this commission, as does the city of Winston-Salem, and 1 member is appointed each by the village of Clemens and the town of Turner's. Currently, the city of Winston-Salem appoints 1 at-large member and 4 categorical members to the board, and the county appoints 3 at-large members and 2 categorical members. Those 2 categorical members for the county are a licensed architect and a local historic landmark district property owner. In Winston-Salem, those categorical seats are based on residence location and professional qualifications. The 2 residential locations are 1 person from a historic district, like Old Salem or Bethabara, and 1 person from the historic overlay district, such as West End. And the professionals are someone such as an archaeologist, landscape architect, planner, or similar, and an architectural historian or preservationist. Did some research on our peer communities, and the only large city in North Carolina that has any professional categorical appointments are Durham. So we are kind of outside of the mainstream in terms of where our regulations are versus what our peers are doing. As I mentioned, this request would change the archaeologist, landscape architect, planner, or similar seat, and the architectural historian. After a little research on this, we came to the conclusion that the roots of those seats are in the makeup of the 1948 Board of Architectural Review for the Old Salem Historical District, which was created in 1948 when the HRC came into existence at a time when our staff didn't have the professional qualifications to review these types of topics. Today, our commission has 2 full-time staff members that are basically extensively trained in historic preservation, and they meet the federal professional qualifications for us to be a certified local government. By relaxing those qualifications and making those seats at large, this change will broaden the pool of potential candidates to the HRC, which will certainly make it easier for Winston-Salem City Council to nominate. Again, this change will bring the HRC into line with the membership structure of our peer communities, and it will also result in more even distribution of the city and the county having 3 at-large and 2 categorical seats. It'll have no impact on the current folks in those 2 seats, and their terms expire respectively in November 2023 and June 2026. HRC actually recommended this change after they discussed it in July 2022, so a year ago. The proposed change was presented to a city council committee in October of last year, and after a presentation and public hearing at the planning board, the board recommended approval of this amendment, and city council ultimately adopted this in June. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Any questions?
All right.
Good.
And then the final planning matter requiring a public hearing is an ordinance amendment to propose to amend the miscellaneous sections of the Unified Development Ordinances. You know, one time a year, they kind of go through and make any kind of non-substantive changes that are necessary, and so it is that time of year.
All right, thank you, Dudley. Again, non-substantive changes are revisions that have no effect on the intent or enforceability of the UDO. So these are things that we might refer to as housekeeping or kind of procedural changes. These revisions are proposed when staff discovers unintended consequences or inconsistencies within the text, often as a result of previous UDO code amendments and the transition period that we had from the old UDO to the UDO Clear Code back in 2019. Just to summarize the categories that these items are in, there's 2 minor changes to the zoning map amendment processes in Chapter 3, 1 minor change to the establishment of the Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District in Chapter 4, correcting an omission to the principal use table and use-specific standards in Chapter 5, reserving a non-conforming section, and revising the definitions chapter. Give you a little detail on each of those. For the zoning map amendment section, we're changing the neighborhood outreach summaries must now include all outcomes before the language is nebulous, so folks could turn in a neighborhood outreach summary, but they wouldn't really be required to say what was even talked about at the meeting. So this is more transparent for when things get to you all on a zoning case, you can understand where neighborhood concerns lie. The requirement for a pre-application conference for special use district or limited districts has been removed. This is something that the commissioners put into effect in about 2007, 2008. It's like special use zoning, but it doesn't have a site plan. As such, there's really not anything for us to talk about with petitioners at a pre-application meeting. Again, through the pre-submittal process, we're already working with petitioners on what an appropriate district would be, and in the about 200 cases of this that we've done, city and county, in the last 15 years, we've never done this pre-application conference because, again, staff believes that the intent is met through other streamlined processes. Regarding the Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District, there's language clarifying that signatures of support from all property owners would be needed if any NCO represents a downzoning. This puts our ordinance in keeping with Chapter 160D of the state planning enabling legislation that was revised adopted in 2021. So again, this doesn't affect anything from how we're enforcing the ordinance, but it makes it clearer to folks who are trying to get one of these overlay districts of the bar they have to read. We're adding a reference to use-specific standards that prohibits electronic sweepstakes operations as a use in Winston-Salem. This doesn't affect the county because the county attorney is already of the opinion that electronic sweepstakes are prohibited in the county, and as such, there's not a use for that in the county. The city attorney has also said that these are prohibited in the city, but we still have that use there just for the city's purposes. They want to have it as a specific use and then show it. Doesn't really affect anything for the. Under Chapter 5, related to the planned residential development standards, we're removing the 3-acre minimum site size. This is to make this development option available on smaller sites in suburban areas as the city and the county are running out of developable land. This helps us make more efficient utilization of that land for cluster homes, which is what planned residential development stands for. And we've also removed a 5-acre minimum site size for multifamily with single-family dwellings on the same zoning lot. I should have said for multiple single-family dwellings on the same zoning lot. This would be like a single-family rental home, such as the ones that are off Peace Haven. Multiple single-family homes, but they're owned by one person. Also related to planned residential developments, we're substituting a 20-foot wide type 1 buffer yard in place of a non-described 30-foot buffer yard that used to be in the PRD standards. This is an oversight that made it difficult for our enforcement staff to adequately tell whether a PRD buffer yard met the intent of the ordinance we were doing. Help streamline that process. Also changing regulations for private swimming pools, so rather than having unique local standards, they shall have to comply with the building, which, again, that's what's actually required by the building code anyway, so correcting a glitch that's been in the UDO. Related to nonconformities, we're reserving the special use permit parking requirements section as this has been removed by previous amendments, and that's a change that's also for Winston-Salem only, so this doesn't affect unincorporated sites. And lastly, we're revising 11 definitions of things that were accidentally left out when we went from the 1994 UDO to the UDO clear. Public hearing was held by the planning board in April. There were no speakers in support or opposition. The planning board ultimately recommended approval of this on a 6-2 vote. One of the concerns related to the PRD buffer yards, and that planning board member was concerned that something might be lost in the translation, which staff again kind of explained that what was in the ordinance before was nebulously defined. And then the other board member was in opposition to removing the pre-application meeting for the limited use. Again, is something that staff feels can be addressed through other means and has been for the 15 years we've had. This was adopted by City Council on June 5th, and I'm glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Please.
I did have one question. I'm certainly familiar with the rationale for the elimination of the 3 continuous acres size for planned residential development in GMAs 3 and 4, but that doesn't really seem to me as a non-substantive change. There's a policy discussion involved. You've got 2 competing needs. You got a need for more housing, but you also have a competing need for the retention of some green areas. We're seeing the impact of weather pattern changes now, such that urban area heat is becoming a major and growing issue. That's a health threat. How is this consistent with efforts to encourage retention of tree cover?
That's a good question, Commissioner Bessie. There's a couple things on this point. That item was actually something that the planning board asked us to do about a year or so ago as a specific work program item when they were adopting cottage core standards, which are a way to cluster multiple small residential units on a single lot in urban areas. At the time, the board said, why do we have a minimum acreage for PRDs in urban areas? Because PRDs do those things that you're talking about. They make more efficient use of urban land from an environmental standpoint, because unlike conventional subdivisions that don't preserve any open space, PRDs have a minimum 15% open space set aside in those suburban areas. So the board explicitly asked us to do that. It was originally a separate item on our work program, but the board said to go ahead and roll it into this amendment because it was a one-line change, and we were going in and doing some other things with the PRDs anyway, such as the relation. Talked about how many acres you needed to have multiple lots in a single ownership and the buffer yard, so this provided a more streamlined process.
Thank you.
Other questions? All righty, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Very good. So I'm going to move around the agenda a little bit, just acknowledging that there's a fairly large group of folks from the tax office here, really to hear John Burgess's presentation on the settlement and the order to collect. So if it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and move that one. John, come on up, and once a year he really, this time of year, he dives into how things went last year and what he's going to do this year. And so and thank you to all his staff who really make it all happen. So, and I apologize to everybody who I just bumped. So sorry about that. Uh-oh. There you go.
Actually, I always have to help. Good afternoon, Commissioners. As Manager stated, this is tax collector settlement. It is a required report. Thankfully for you, an official document about 300 pages long. We provide that.
Hardly wait.
What this presentation in particular is sort of a summary of those numbers and also some verbalization effort. Do all of it. So glad to be with you today, and let's kind of go ahead here. When we talk about tax collection, certainly there are some external factors that impact ability. So we do keep an eye on the unemployment. Happy to report that it has remained low and actually decreased. Another thing that can impact our ability is properties or people file bankruptcy. That ends our ability to go after the money that. But as more money is tied up in bankruptcy, so when you look at the third bullet down, the 2022 bills that we're talking specifically, bankruptcy impacted about $123,000 worth. That's very different than the two previous years of $51,000. And don't want to spoil anything, but that one difference actually makes up more than the difference. Result. More on that in just a second. As far as the work that we do, there's two sides of everything. One of those is we just have to account for everything. Bills, there's about 163,000 real estate records, about 180. So a lot of our work is just actually processing those payments. So when you look at these first three bullet points, they account for about 83,000 payments that staff in a more manual way process through the year. Those are where folks come into our office, pay us in person. Payment. There's two ways. Time, depending on the volumes, we get more efficient with our remittance. But regardless, these are very hands-on tax payments every year. So those 83,000 payments, that number did go down slightly over the previous year. We had bottom three payment methods are all electronic. So they still have to be processed by our staff, but you can imagine there's a hyper efficiency involved in processing those payments. Those totaled about 91,000 payments last year, and that was up about 88. Part of what we credit that to is certainly, our demographics change over time. More and more folks pay electronically as time goes on. Also, a couple of years ago, if you recall, we had a new payment. Those rates were much less than they were before. And so today you can actually pay your tax bill for 25 cents. Find that the average postage stamp is 66 cents, right? So it's even cheaper than mailing something is to pay electronically by e-check. There's a $2.95 charge for debit card payments. We accept 4 major brands. And then there's if you pay by credit card, it's 2.3%. Keep in mind that our consumers do pay those fees. The county does money on those. Pay for, but those are reductions over to what we certainly has enabled more and more. I just want to bring that to your. The other thing that we care a whole lot about is you're not going to have good collection work if you don't have good assessment. So, a little bit more about what we do in our office as well. This past year, we processed over 327,000 vehicles. Registered motor vehicles are not in our charge. We don't collect bills, but we do put value, do work applications. You see those reports about every month where we're making some adjustments for refund. And that number of vehicles remained stable over last year. We had no informals last year. That's a drop from the year before, really just because we're same thing with the Board of Equalization Review. We also had a lot more valuation notice. These are very typical numbers in the fact there's still a lot of work to even get out 7,800. We did experience a small drop in the number of deeds processed. We were about 13,000 of those. Last year it was about 50. That is still a historically high number. So still a good number. What was interesting was that of those 13,000 deeds that we processed, the amount of deeds requiring us to do some sort of plan work, some sort of plan work for our double. It went from about 657 deeds to about 1,300. Had more work to do there. Correspondingly, there was a small increase in the number of plats, went from 360 to 395. Our phone call volume remained pretty stable at about 48,000, which year of the reappraisal, that was about 50. So 48,000 is about the number of phone calls that we 703. So I wanted to give you just a little background about the sort of foundation work that's involved. Whenever you were talking about calculating the collection rate, I've got how to do that. The only thing I always ask is if you want to compare us to other counties' collection rate, wonderful. At the same token, just keep in mind that the way that we've calculated the collection rate has been unchanged for decades. Practice the way that we do that. But ours is very literal. 30th, whatever we have in hand, that we don't payments that were postmarked 30th. We do some things like that we believe are correct, but there are some different. This slide sort of sets the stage of where we are. And so at the beginning of the year, in terms of county dollars, the levy that we needed to collect was that amount of money did not go past due. Only $17.7 million went past due. What that really says is about 93.5% of all the payments that were owed to them were paid. That actually was an increase. Usually that was great to see. So the real task at hand for our staff and the public was of that $17.7 million, how much of that could we collect? We were able to collect almost 16 million of that. And so we collected 90% of what was on the table. That number is very normal to our hover right around that. So we're very, very, very pleased with that. The overall amount of money that our office collects, because we do collect for all the jurisdictions by county, so the total amount of money that we were 75 higher than the 400. Always the big question is how did we do on our collection rate? And very happy to be able to report to you a wonderful collection. That's the second highest ever. This represents, I believe, our 8th year consecutively of being above 99%. So we're very, very, very pleased about that. we certainly know that we're able to do that because of the support that you, the board, gives us, and county manager and budget office and attorney and finance and everybody else that helps us along our way. And so I just want to make sure that I'm saying thank you. You're supporting us the way that we need to be supported. And we've just like a lot of departments, we've had turnover, in the past, and we've been able to work through that. We've got some great folks on our staff, our 72 staff members. And but we've also had to do some more education, and so you are helping us in the budget process to provide that needed education. Certainly want to always acknowledge the wonderful relationship we have here in Forsyth with the public. We are very fortunate to work where we work, and we acknowledge that, and we always remember of whose money all this was first, and that was theirs. And so while it's owed to the county, we realize where the money comes from. And so we try to tailor ourselves and our actions to be very respectful of how we deal with the public. And we want to be accurate, informative, and timely in everything that we do. And so that's part of why I brought some of the staff up. And there's a couple rows there of our staff. They're representative of our whole office. And I can just tell you it's a great privilege to be able to serve as your assessor and collector, but really that means I get to work with these and the other folks downstairs, and they're a wonderful group of folks and do a great job. And anyway, I just I'm all smiles about the results and the staff and everything else. So, and hope that you are as well. So. Beyond that, I told you the real answer was 9933. I always like to kind of do a little something different and tell you, well, if you were to allow me to get rid of the bills that were tied up in bankruptcy or tied up in an active appeal or are already at the foreclosure attorney that I can't do anything else to, in case you were to give me that privilege, I went ahead and calculated it for you, or actually Ann did. The adjusted collection rate would be 99.46%. If you took those things out. You can see the impact of bankruptcy appeals and foreclosure on the 22 bills at about $359,000. And when you realize how much it takes to move the needle, that's a large amount of money. This gives you a brief history of the collection rates over the last several years, and in order to move that up 1/10 or 1/100th of 1%, we have to collect about $27,400 in county money. And at this time of year, as we work those accounts, we do start at the highest accounts and work our way down. We're somewhere in the neighborhood of around $1,000 on an account, and not all of that's county money. That's like county, municipality, and everything else. So it takes a whole lot sometimes to collect even $27,000 worth of money to move that needle one little bit. So the municipalities that we also collect for, just wanted to give you their collection rates as well. And those this time we were able to increase 3 out of those 10. High Point remains the star at 100%. We're so thankful for the few properties we have that are High Point, where they all paid once again. And so that was the results for them. As far as the prior year collection rate, so these are the 9 years of taxes that are in our charge that we can pursue. We had a collection rate of 29.3%. You can see that that's right in line with our historic numbers of anywhere from 27 to 34%. That 40% was an anomaly. That's where we had a large account under appeal, and they didn't pay till after June 30th one year. So, but you see that we're right in line with where we typically are at the 29. As far as the municipalities and their prior tax collections, that's always a very wildly changing number every year. We did 6 out of the 10 did increase on that category this time, but those can dramatically change. Some of the municipalities are so small, collection rates usually very good. Have like a $1,500 tax bill that really percentage-wise changes the volume of how we did on past dues. So if you think of our annual collection rate, 933, as being sort of like the end of the first chapter of the book. This is helping us understand what the end of the book says, and that would be 9 chapters later. And so at the end of that 9th year, or end of that 10th year, excuse me, how did we do? What was the collection rate of those funds that are in our charge that we can pursue with enforced collections? So if you look back in time and look at 2013, the levy for the county taxes was $209 million, and we collected all of that except for $179,000. So and that's just tax money alone. That's not counting interest and all this other kind of thing that's also involved. So the collection rate at the end of the 10th year is 99.91. And so to me, that's amazing. You can see that number is very hard to change. You see that it hasn't changed much in the last several years. And the year that you don't see on there would say 99.90. So it is a hard number to move, but it's a great number in that it shows that there's very little actually of any kind of money that escapes taxation or collection, actually, in property tax. Sometimes you just got to give it 10 years. But we do collect. So this slide is very important for several reasons, and it also can be misleading. So I need to, I've got some asterisks all over the page here, and I'm sorry that some of them are in small print. This details out the enforcement collection techniques that we can use. And the reason this is a little dangerous is because the numbers here can be, the same account could have multiple items attempted on it. And so you could have the same account show up in, say, debt set-off versus, and including wage garnishments, for example. So that's why it's a little dangerous to show the numbers. But I want to show them because they, A, tell you everything that we can do. And B, if you look at it from top to bottom, it gives you a good idea of the process in which we enact. So this doesn't talk about us sending the bill. This doesn't talk about us sending the past due notice. But what this is really from the perspective of is our revenue collector. So the first thing that we do as far as enforced collection, besides just sending out information like a bill and a past due amount, is we send any account that has over $50 uncollected on it to debt set-off. And so that goes to the state. And so if anyone has a North Carolina state tax return, or if they have some lottery winnings, we can intercept those funds to pay their tax bill. After that, when our staff starts to work their lists, we really try to reach out to everyone and give them a telephone call. We're one of the few offices that actually do that. But we're trying to figure out what's going on, B, do they have awareness of what's going on, and C, what can happen, and D, what can we do? And so one of the things we love to do is write term agreements. It doesn't cost them anything extra to do that. It's something we can offer, and so we like being able to write those. This past year we wrote 519 of those, and that was slightly up from 453 last year. The other things that we can do is we can attach or do wage garnishment. So we can attach up to 10% of their pay. And so if we can find out where you work. So that number actually was about the same as last year. Actually went down a little bit from last year. Bank attachments, we can, if we find out where you're banking, we can swoop in to get the money out of that. Just so that you're aware, we are not allowed and cannot access any sort of Social Security funds that are paid in. The bank is the one that makes sure that does not happen. Rent garnishments doesn't look like a very big item at zero there, but what that is for example, in the case of a shopping center owner, if they've not paid their tax bill, we can go directly to their tenant and intercept their rent payment and pay the tax bill. And so the reason you see zeros there is because, first of all, most properties like that already pay their bill, number one. Number two, those that don't, when they know that we're nosing around talking to their tenants, they usually come in and pay. And so it's very effective in that. So it may look like it's not important, but it can be very important technique when the need arises. far as foreclosures are concerned, this does now include both traditional mortgage-style foreclosures and in-rem, just so you're aware. And this year, or in the previous year, we sent about 387 accounts to foreclosure. That was slightly up from 357 the year before and slightly down from 2 years ago at 412. But you can see there's sort of a stabilization there. We're somewhere in that 300 to 400 accounts ultimately sent to the foreclosure attorney each year. We do all kinds of things before they are officially sent, such as we send an internal foreclosure warning letter. We also have a letter that comes directly from the foreclosure attorney before he gets it that says they're looking at it. And so it's a sort of amping up the trajectory there of what's going on. And those numbers stayed about the same as last year, but those are all part of our what we call foreclosure process. Levy and sale of personal property, that's sort of the foreclosure side of personal property. I have little dashes there, and that's something that we're going to work on in the upcoming year. We did not do any of those in the current year. So most of what I've been talking about is what we did do. Well, here's what we didn't do. We did not collect $1.8 million in 2022 taxes last year. And when you add that to the remaining amount of uncollected taxes over the last 9 years of $2.9 million, you see that there's $4.7 million owed to the county through property tax that were not paid. That number is the second lowest in the last 10 years, so we're very proud of that. We've been around the $4 to $5 million range now for about 5 or so years. 7 years ago and beyond, we used to also collect the registered motor vehicles, which kind of drug us down a little bit. But 11 years ago, to give you an idea, we had about $10 million that was uncollected. So we're very happy that there's less money year over year out that is uncollected. This is my last slide of numbers here, and so I like to talk about sort of what I call cash flow to the county from ad valorem taxes means. So this number on the left does include registered motor vehicles income, which again is not in my charge, but it is money received, and registered motor vehicles is still an ad valorem tax. So in the budget that was adopted the previous year, $297 million was the budgeted amount to be received from ad valorem tax, and happy to report that we were able to collect $302 million. So that's about $5.2 million over budget, or 1.7%. So we're very pleased to be able to report that to you. Some years it might be in the million or $2 million range, but we've been very fortunate that the last few years has been around the $5 million mark. To end up for you today, I just always go over our goals. For the most part, they remain relatively unchanged. We really always try to work with people in need, and that's part of why we are making those phone calls. We're trying to find out what's going on and see what we can do, if anything. And we're very careful about making sure that we've done everything the way we're supposed to do. There's some of our policies that go beyond what the state requires through the statutes that we do. Try to make sure that we have proper notice and timeliness and things like that. We will continue employee cross-training. We've been moving staff around our office so that they understand more and more about property tax in general. That helps them wherever they go back to another section of property tax, helps them do a better job there. I used to say that we wanted to begin an in-rem foreclosure program. Now I can just tell you we're going to monitor it because we're started it. So I was out just the other day putting out some signs related to that on properties, and so we're very, very pleased that started. While it's a small amount of properties, it really fits a niche that we were struggling to really hit before, and so we can do that appropriately through in-rem. I would anticipate that our community outreach would increase over the next year. We have a reappraisal coming up for 2025, and we're always happy to go talk about exemptions and other things if people invite us to that. And so we're happy to get the word out about that. And on the personal property side, so you may have noticed or picked up on a few of the numbers in the slides, our personal property collection rate went down a little bit, and so we've already, we're looking at that. We've already made some changes to try to address that and be a little more proactive. Personal property is a lot more difficult than real estate. Real estate doesn't go anywhere. We know where it is and things like that. Personal property is much more difficult, but nonetheless, it still matters just as much. So we are making some shifts there to try to get a leg up on our personal property collection rate for the year to come. That completes what I have for you, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for John?
I have a few comments, if I could. John, I wanted to say thank you for all that you do, especially for the community in District A. I know that you've done a lot of work in that community, and wanted to thank your staff for being here too, because I see you guys working, and thank you for allowing me to pull those folks in the hallway and you guys help them. So I appreciate that. I did want to re-emphasize on the community outreach. We know that the transitioning is happening with reevaluations of the taxes, right? And it's anxiety and angst feelings sometimes in our communities about fairness and equity, right? So I definitely want to see more of that. However, we could start that definitely in the airport area. We want to emphasize on, if I can tell Dudley that too as well, some of the places that we probably need to start and just give a little bit more attention to. So other than that, I just wanted to say thank you and continue to do a great job. And thank you all as well for being here.
John, thank you. Or go ahead.
Could you discuss just briefly the difference between the traditional foreclosure and NREM foreclosure program?
Yes, sir. There's pluses and minuses to both. There's reasons to use one over the other. In mortgage-style foreclosure, a lot or all of the fees that are associated with that are able to be placed back on the tax bill. And so that's the attorney fee, that's the service fee, mailing fee, those types of things. So from a county perspective, there's less risk there if we use that style of foreclosure because it goes, the person who's causing the issue gets to pay the bill to resolve that. I will tell you that overall, while we do send 300 to 400 a year to foreclosure, we don't sell anywhere near that. And so what that means is most all the time people find a way to pay and make things right. So they end up paying their own bill. So about 85% or so of the time, that money that expense that you see in our budget is also matched with the revenue piece because the person's paying it. That process does take longer. It is the way of noticing is served by law enforcement. And so you can imagine if you had 20 heirs and they're all over the United States or all over the world or wherever, that service, that direct service is very time consuming and expensive. So you can have, as you have the number of parties to serve goes up, you have much higher cost in that realm. It takes a lot longer. It's not unusual to see the ultimate time for a foreclosure in mortgage style to be 2 to 3 years. Some of those that are more detailed can be 4, 5, and 6. A lot. Now, NREM is simply, it's all foreclosure. In the end, they're still going to, if you don't pay, there's still going to be an auction. But what that process is the manner in which that you're served is through certified mail. And so it's all through the courts, but both activities are. The sheriff's involved in NREM, in the sale of, the courts are more involved in the other. But some of the fees, actually a decent amount of the fees, we're not able to pass through on the NREM side to the tax bill. Some of them we are, and some of them we aren't. And so there's already everyone you send to NREM, there's going to be some county cost expense borne that will not be remunerated at all. And so the other thing is when you get to the higher parties to serve, in the case of like 80 heirs, that's much cheaper to serve through certified mail. And we have to advertise those twice. there's pluses and minuses to the cost on the advertising. But in the end, it's a cheaper process, and it also takes about a year, not 3 years. So in a nutshell, I don't know if I helped or not, but those would be what I would say would be the two differences, or how to describe those two processes.
All right, thank you.
John, I would just like to say thank you. You and your staff certainly give us bragging rights, and we thank you for that.
I'd like to echo that, and maybe you could introduce some of your staff, or have them stand up by groups, or call everybody out by name. I mean, they've been here, and appreciate them being here. It's a kind of once a year sort of.
Well, we've got some managers that whatever, stand up or something. And then we have our other folks that are involved in different parts of our office. Pastor John. Phyllis is I like. That's very. We get along. We have fun. Denise is also part of our crew there, and so that's just representative a little bit of our crew. So it doesn't count everybody there, but just wanted to say thank you to them
Thank
by
you.
bringing them up. Certainly.
Well, thank you all.
And Monica, sorry. and Monica, sorry about that.
All right, thank you, John. Do we need a break? We've been here about an hour. We can keep trucking, get on through it. I just wanted to make sure if we had a...
We're good to go? We're good.
Good to go. All right, let's keep rolling. All right, so I'll jump back to the rest of the agenda, the minutes which will be coming out.
They were mailed out yesterday.
Mailed out yesterday, so check your email and you'll see those. We've got two budget and finance items. Item 5, you got a resolution authorizing the expenditure of opioid settlement funds, and you've got an amendment to the North Carolina Opioid Settlement Special Revenue Fund. Denise Price is going to review that, and after she finishes that, she's going to talk about a budget ordinance amendment that appropriates $114,850, and she'll talk a little bit about the Sturmer House property and what we're trying to do there. So both of those.
Well, good afternoon. It's good to see everyone. So the first item is to authorize the use of opioid settlement dollars to support our substance use health educator Frost Team Lead. This will be for fiscal year 24. It also is to authorize all of our fiscal year 24 opioid settlement spending. So you might recall, not so long ago on May the 4th, you approved some projects. This summarizes those projects. It also subsequently fixes an error to the minutes for that meeting where we inadvertently left in a couple of projects that you did not authorize. So that is fixed by the replacement of the item that had the error. It was a supporting document, and it is titled FY24 Expenditures of Opioid Settlement Funds. And you'll notice that the document in this item is now correct. Be happy to answer any questions about that.
Any questions? Good. Thank you.
Okay, and the second item is about the Sturmer Place. That is the facility that we are preparing to be a transitional home for youth in DSS custody. You may recall a similar item in fiscal year 23 that authorized funds. Those funds were used to do an assessment of the facility to see what needed to happen to bring it up to current building code. That's a requirement for facility licensure for that space. The other dollars were not utilized in fiscal year 23. So they were reverted back to the reserve fund, and we are now asking for those dollars carried forward to fiscal year 24 so that we can actually do the work to get this facility licensed. We're making progress on this home. We've had some hiccups, one of which was how we were going to build this service or how Partners was going to bill it. They have found a workaround to not having an in lieu of service definition, so pleased about that. We also have Partners that's been working diligently to identify a provider, and I'm pleased to let you know that they have both enthusiastic and well-qualified providers that are available to deliver services. So that's coming together nicely at the same time that we're feeling like we're getting traction with the fixing of the facility, can begin to get it licensed and hopefully get some kiddos in this space. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
But just make sure I heard this correctly. DHHS has done what they needed to do on this? Nope.
We have a workaround.
The
The
DHHS.
workaround is working around them so
Yes.
that, well, what? Okay. As in,
there was
describe the work, I mean, if they're supposed to, I mean, we've been talking about this for 6 months, and just then getting them, in fact, it's been over a year since we requested, hence the budget from last year. So what is new in a workaround now that couldn't have been new 12 months ago?
It was really identifying a creative solution. So the in lieu of service definition that would have been used to reimburse a provider for this service has not been approved by the department at this point. Partners has elected to use a funding stream called EPSDT, Early Prevention Strategic, hang on, I've got it written down for you, Dr. Martin. Early and Periodic Screening, Diagnostic, and Treatment. So it is a funding stream that they can utilize instead of that in lieu of service definition. So instead of waiting for that piece to be ready by the state, we can move forward without it.
Okay, so we've had a review, and we think in the 114,850 is going to cover everything.
Yes.
And if you were going to guess when you might have some young people occupying the Sturmer House, what might that guess be?
Okay, so that's a bit of a crystal ball question. And the reason I say that is because licensure is unpredictable. So once the provider is selected, they then have to apply for facility license. The licensure process, we are understanding, has taken 18 to 24 months.
Oh, my goodness.
And that is also through DHHS.
Correct.
It's ridiculous.
The workaround is
We got a way to bill it. We've
It's
got
still a
potential
long way
provider.
around.
We still have to have the facility licensed.
And in the meantime, kids will be in our lobby.
Right.
Figure that. I mean, it's just crazy.
oh my, that's just an oh my in terms of,
Our architect who did the assessment of the facility to see if it was in compliance with current code has had some initial conversation with DHSR, so they're aware that this is coming. We are hopeful that that will garner us some leverage and move it forward a bit quicker, but there's not a guarantee for that.
We have representatives in Raleigh who think that the state can do this better than we can. I don't believe that's going to work.
wow. Well, thank you for continuing to stay with it, and I don't know, maybe I'll live long enough to see somebody get it. I'm not sure about that, but. All righty, thank you. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, I apologize. Can we step back to item 5 just briefly? I want to make sure I understand that technically what we are doing on the 29th is the amendment for $51,299 for an additional strategy. The other items we previously authorized as part of the budget.
That is correct.
Thank you.
And while I'm here, can I just give a quick update on tailored plan?
Please do.
Wonderful. So you may have heard yesterday that the state has delayed for the third time the launch of the tailored plan. The tailored plan was the package that the LME MCOs would be managing for individuals with severe and persistent mental illness, but also managing their health care needs. So I just wanted to make you aware of that, and also say to you, for folks in our community that would have otherwise been managed by this plan, what that means for them is that they'll continue to receive both their health care services and their other needs in the same way that they currently are. This particular delay is a little bit different than the two prior in that the state has not given a date for go live. So it is, at this point, indefinitely on hold until they give us a timeline for implementation.
Whatever I read from partners said that they thought it would take place after the new year, sometime between January and July, perhaps.
Thank you very much.
May I ask, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Do we believe that this is associated in any way with the delay in adopting the state budget, or is this completely?
Partly, yeah. What I read said yes, it was directly because of that.
That's what I was.
And part of it, they had to get all their stuff done, so then there's a sign-up period of time that every person has an opportunity to select their provider. And so that's being delayed. And so they're making this, again, kind of a wild guesstimate because the date, there was an article in the paper today said, well, we might have a budget by mid-August, maybe. But I think that's a real maybe, talking to some of the other folks down there. I don't know. So we'll see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Denise. All right, agenda items 7 and 8 are both public health grant matters, and I'll turn both of them over to Chantel to review these.
Okay. The first item is a resolution where the Department of Public Health is requesting authorization to apply for a Healthy Start Initiative grant available through the Health Resources and Services Administration. This would allow them to provide services to improve health outcomes before, during, and after pregnancy and reduce the documented racial ethnic differences in rates of infant death and adverse perinatal outcomes. It is a competitive grant that would be awarded to up to 10 agencies, with the maximum award to an agency being $1.1 million per year. I would be happy to try to answer any questions.
No questions.
Okay. The next item is Public Health is also requesting authorization to apply for a Reducing Infant Mortality in Communities grant available through DHHS. The grant would allow Public Health to implement evidence-based strategies that are proven to lower infant mortality rates. The available awards range between $155,302 to $305,302. And I would be happy to try to answer any questions for that.
Questions?
Thank you, Chantel. Item 9 is resolution authorizing execution of the necessary documents to apply for and accept award Golden Leaf grant funds to the Community-Based Grants Initiative for Workforce Development, Economic and Agricultural Programs. Andrea Sheets is going to come up and talk about this. This is a little unique in that it's not the Golden Leaf standard application process. They're doing something a little bit different just with these funds, and so we don't have, it's not the normal just bringing you an idea. So turn it over to Andrea.
Good to see you all again. So our office within the county is managing this process through the Golden Leaf Foundation. Every few years, they rotate a region around the state and set aside a specific pot of funds for that region, specifically work a little bit more in depth with the counties in that area. We were last year in 2017, or took similar action. So just do want to pause and let you all know, we do not yet know what we'll be submitting. We will meet with Golden Leaf's team next week to really go through some of the projects that have been submitted so far. The county has received 6 early submissions, and we can select 4 of those up to $1.5 million to submit. And so we'll work with Golden Leaf, get their feedback on what's been submitted so far. We'll have that to you all next week. Just timing with submission and your approval, it needs to come before you today. So just want to pause and make sure I got that across. So like I said, the board also took action in 2017. Our office and the managers have collaborated to determine the process and strategy statement. We identified county projects that we thought were a natural fit, and other nonprofits were aware of this process and reached out to us, and we've engaged with them, sent them a similar strategy statement, same to everyone. And so we, like I said, we are still working on recommendations, and we are open to the board suggestions of what not to endorse. If there's anything you see here that as we work through those, you do not want to endorse, please let us know. But there is 2 county projects. One is Tanglewood Business Park. The other is some virtual career exploration software and programming that was also part of our ask to the General Assembly. And since the state budget has not yet been approved, we're also submitting this there. Forsyth Tech Community College for their instructional capacity to try to address that workforce shortage. The Good Stuff is looking for $1 million for the expansion of a shared use kitchen. The United Way of Forsyth County is asking for $520,000 for a community empowerment center. And then the Hope to Thrive nonprofit is looking for $520,000. But if there's any of those you wish to not endorse or have any other questions.
So just as a clarification, so when this comes back for formal approval, will you have already done the work with? So the list could be pared down?
List will be pared down.
Okay.
Maximum of 4.
And then at that point, we can choose to endorse them or not. And we could certainly there'll be a much more detailed presentation on what we've sort of been asked to include in that next time.
May I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Commissioner Bessie and then Commissioner
Okay,
McDaniel.
fair enough.
Is there a risk that if we choose to endorse a large nonprofit request, that might bump one of the county's own requests?
And so Golden Leaf, we have 4 projects up to 1.5 million. Of those 4, none of them can exceed 1 million. So that finagling and what will be best for the community, maximum impact, will be part of our consideration.
I would encourage you to consider that risk in the list that we endorse. Thank you.
My question was, how were these organizations already chosen?
They were the ones who submitted their plans to us, and then we just submitted those through.
Okay.
So many organizations within the county were aware just because of Golden Leaf's own outreach, and any group that reached out to us, we just passed theirs along. The county at this point is a bit of a pass-through.
I gotcha. Okay. I didn't have a problem with any of them. I just wanted to, they're all good organizations as well, so thank you. Okay.
But back to Commissioner Bessie's point, basically the 4 people we've heard from understand that it's an endorsement is a very broad general term here until we know what we're dealing with, and that they're not in any way feel like that if we do get X amount in awards, they're going to get all of it, and that decision will be made later.
Right. So we have been very transparent with the outside organizations that they sent me the file. I sent the same thing to Golden Leaf and said, we'll work with Golden Leaf to make that decision of what we think is best for the community. And any application that if we do choose to endorse that's not a county project would be between the outside organization and Golden Leaf. The county is not the pass-through of those funds, and it's very project specific.
Got it.
Andrew, is it fair to say that this is unique in that this is Golden Leaf kind of saying to us, these are things we want to do, and so and I think the boards, once they sort of decide that, and we know that direction, they're likely to get funded, and really the board's endorsement is making sure that you're okay with what they are interested in doing. Is that?
That's why I asked the question,
Yeah.
where did that come from, the referral come from?
Yeah, so to Commissioner Bessie's point, it's a little less, I mean, if Golden Leaf really wants to do one of the other ones and not ours, that'll be driven by them, not so much by us, actually, so. But we're hopeful, and we did get a call from, Golden Leaf wanted to make sure that we knew that they were interested in funding things in this community. So they called and said, make sure you apply, make sure you're strategic, and we want to see what your ideas are. And so it's a unique opportunity.
All righty. Any other questions?
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Audrey. Appreciate that. All right, ARPA, we are narrowing down the agreements, and so Aisha Carter is going to come up and talk about a resolution approving execution of an agreement with North Carolina Rush Trad Soccer Club Incorporated to construct a futsal court with the American Rescue Plan Act funds. So, Aisha.
County Commissioners, I'm here to present agenda item approving and execution of an agreement with North Carolina Rush Trad Soccer Club, Inc. to construct a futsal court with ARPA funds. The court will cost $43,780. It will be located at Old Town Elementary School, which is 3930 Renolda Road, 27106. The futsal court will be available to students during school hours, as well as the public after school. The futsal court has been approved by Winston Forsyth County Schools admin, including Chief of Planning and Construction, and by Old Town Elementary School Principal, Dr. Gladstone. Old Town Elementary School has student population of 701 students, 65% Hispanic, 26 African American, 5% other, and 4% white. If you're wondering what a futsal court is, it's basically a soccer court that's smaller than a soccer court, and the ball it weighs more than a soccer ball. Questions?
I have a quick one, and this is just a memory test for me. I thought when we approved this, I remember particularly the soccer issue, were we not also talking about one of these over in the park off of, near the mental health complex over there, and weren't we talking about the same kind of court there?
Different.
Different?
We talked about it as a possibility at the park, but we're still in design phase, and we have not solidified. We said a sporting court, but we're not sure if it'll be futsal or basketball or what. But there were discussions about it as a possibility.
So this grant, this particular ARPA project is just for one court?
One court.
At
Old Town.
Old Town. Got it.
And they had originally requested 2, but we only approved 1 for them.
I think I remember that. Thank you. Got it. Oh, and before you sit down, and there may be other questions, the other question I had, because we left several items that we felt like in our budget request this year for different things would be appropriate, another ARPA, with uncommitted funds. And I just want to make sure that we haven't forgotten getting what that list of what we think are uncommitted funds may be.
We're still working on it.
Yeah, so we actually met this week. We've got kind of the convergence of some rules that came down late last fiscal year that affect some things. You also have kind of an estimate of where we are with other projects. And so all of that, we're actually working on an agenda item to bring to you. It'll probably be in August, but that does a reconciliation, a partial reconciliation, and we'll answer that question, and we'll also sort of reaffirm our strategy around the revenue loss. In our expectation is we're going to need to go ahead and claim a little bit of revenue loss to be in compliance based on our last premium payment. And so a lot of stuff happened there. It'll be August when we can bring that to you. And at the same time, we're going to bring you a pretty good update of where we are on the spend and process and all that. So we're working on it, but it's complicated.
Great. Other questions for Aisha?
So I just have a comment about the football. Thank you for that. I love seeing those kids out there when I go home in the afternoon, and I love seeing them have something to do versus what they could be doing in the community. So I thank this board for our support doing that. I do also have a question in terms of some calls that I've been getting from some of the constituents about the ARPA funding, and the reimbursement, I guess, method is behind. And do we know why that's so, or it's not behind? Well, if someone is behind, could they call you?
They can call.
Okay, fair enough. All right.
Yeah, we're sticking to the ARPA agreements, the date for it to, we have a 30-day window.
Okay.
So it's not behind.
I'm just telling you what's being shared with us, so, okay. All right, then, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. All right, very good. All right, we have a number of contractual matters. Item 11 is a resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement between Forsyth County and Stryker Sales LLC. It provides service and maintenance of the LifePak cardiac monitor defibrillators and the Lucas chest compression devices. Chief Joey Hunley is going to review this item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, I were talking about the futsal court, and we don't know what that is, but after the explanation, Scott nominated Mike to be the captain of the futsal team for the county. So we're going to be wearing casts, much like you are, just on our feet for too long. It's all good. So this item is for a 3-year service agreement with Stryker Sales for the preventive maintenance and repairs to the LifePak 15 cardiac monitors and the Lucas devices, which are manual CPR devices for all of emergency services. It includes on-site annual preventive maintenance, inspection, unlimited repairs, including parts, labor, and travel with battery coverage. And so it's a $221,000 3-year contract for 37 LifePak 15s and the 3 Lucas devices, which is about $73,700 a year. Things to note, we have had these contracts in place before. This contract starts based on the new monitors and the equipment that we purchased. And last year, the contract that we had in place saved us $32,000 on expenses that we would have had we not had this contract in place. And historically, that's what we've seen in other years as well. This is a sole source contract. There is no other vendor that will do this. It's proprietary software and hardware or software that they work on. So we're kind of stuck. We're stuck on that. So that's, I'll entertain any questions you have.
Quick one. And the quick one is, you mentioned that this contract saved $32,000 last year. Does that mean that we had losses that would have been in excess of $100,000?
Yes, sir.
All right,
Last year's expenses would have totaled about over $104,000.
I got it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, one option we had used with some of these type devices is to actually go out. There's an insurance company that'll let you go out and insure them separately outside of this, and we monitor those pretty carefully. But that would be kind of the only other option you would have. And of course, you're going to pay Stryker's bill, and you're sort of gambling whether or not to do that. This is the piece of equipment that shocks you back to life, and so you want to. It's the most important piece of equipment on that truck. So.
I presume that you're selecting options based at least in part on what keeps them working when you need them most
sir.
effectively. Okay.
That's fact. Yeah, they'll come in and do an annual maintenance and preventive maintenance on them, and then if we have issues, we call them. They're quick to respond to get things up and running. So.
Very good questions. We had a request to take us about a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Can you just take a little?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Joey. Thank you very much. All righty. We are coming up, I believe, on Tim's report. I'll just go ahead and call him up here to tell us a little bit about our agreement to provide temporary employment services for one-stop early voting and elections response at the Board of Elections.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Thank you.
I'm here today to present to you a resolution authorizing an agreement to execute an agreement between the Forsyth County Board of Elections and the Resource Company Incorporated in order to provide us with temporary staffing services. So we conducted an informal bid process where we had 3 service providers that pre-qualified out of 18 companies to submit letters of interest. Those 3 companies are the Resource Company Incorporated, Headway, and Green Resources. In comparing the pricing information for the 3 companies, the Resource and Headway offered the lowest bid of a 35% markup, and followed by Green Resources at 43 to 46% markup. The main difference between the 2 low bidders is that the Resource is headquartered and are fully staffed in their Winston-Salem office. They're also already familiar with providing us with local election services, not just to us, but to Guilford County as well. They have exceeded expectations in providing exemplary service to our department. And so based on our evaluation of the selection criteria and the pricing, it is the recommendation of the Forsyth County Board of Elections to contract with the Resource Company Incorporated. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Any questions for Tim?
Tim, thank you for doing the research. I appreciate that. Where is Headway located anyways?
Raleigh, North Carolina.
That's what I need to know. Local is what we do. Thank you.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Agenda item 13 is a resolution ratifying and authorizing a contract for the provision and installation of a rental chiller at Public Safety Center. Scott Angel's here, and he's accompanied with Mike Shore, who is his main facilities guy. So.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Board. So the 2 chillers at the Public Safety Center were installed as part of the 2012-2013 building upfit project. Each of those chillers has 3 compressors, and the compressors are of a little bit different design than we typically see in chillers we have at other facilities. And early on, we did have some issues with 2 of those compressors, and they were actually replaced under warranty. And until recently, we had limited issues with those units, and the issues we did encounter were fixable. However, over the past few months, we've encountered issues with several of the compressors, and the most recent efforts by county staff as well as external resources basically exhausted the options to keep 4 of the 6 compressors functional, and the units must be replaced to ensure appropriate cooling capacity for the building. So while the replacement compressors are on order and being installed, supplemental chiller capacity is required to keep the Public Safety Center conditioned to a level that is comfortable for the occupants. Informal quotes were sought by staff, and bids were received from 2 contractors to provide and install a temporary chiller on the roof of the Public Safety Center. Professional Air Systems submitted the low bid in the amount of $86,049 for a 90-day rental period, and Brady Services submitted the second bid in the amount of $127,225.13 for a 90-day rental period. So with the rising temperatures of summer, it was necessary to move as quickly as possible to get the rental chiller installed. So Professional Air Systems did install the chiller on Saturday, July 1st. So this resolution ratifies an agreement with Professional Air Systems for the provision and installation of the rental chiller at the Public Safety Center. The agreement with Professional Air Systems includes $66,372 for additional rental time if it's needed. Hopefully it won't be, but if it is, it'll be there. So the total contract amount is $152,421. So with that, I would like to acknowledge the work of Mike Shore, who's our Facilities Operations Manager, who along with his staff coordinated the work to get a contractor in place in pretty short order to make this rental chiller project happen. And they did a great job of coordinating all the logistics that went into this, and to keep the folks in the Public Safety Center comfortable. And I'm very appreciative of all their efforts. So with that, Mike and I are here to answer any questions you all may have.
Only question I've got, you've already got a new vendor. I mean, are we going to be able to meet this 90-day deadline and getting a new? Are there supply chain, are there
Well,
Are the
we've been
units
told-
available? Are there people out there? Can we get this project bid and handled and installed?
We are working through the process right now of getting compressors ordered. We've been told it'll be 9 to 11 weeks from the time the order is placed to when we can receive those.
So you're just buying the compressors, you're not replacing the equipment?
We're not replacing the chiller units, we are
Just
replacing the.
You're just replacing the compressors?
Correct. Yes, sir.
And think you can get them? And
Yes, that's what the vendor's telling us.
all right,
They're
okay.
available.
It's good.
And-
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm just going to assume that most of these organizations have gone through the MWBE process.
That's something, Mike, can speak to that.
And the vendors that we approached for the rental process, they were not MWBE. There's not a lot of HVAC vendors in Winston-Salem that do MWBE.
Yeah.
For the chiller compressor replacements, we have reached out to those entities, but with the quickness that we needed to get this rental in place, we did not reach out.
That's fair. Just put it right here for in the future. And then you said that both of them are local. These folks are local?
Pro Air is based in Rural Hall.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, okay, fair enough. All right, thank you.
I was just thinking a nickname might be nice now. Call you Short Order Shore. It all kind of flows together.
I'll keep it in mind.
I think he operates that way most of the time, actually, on about everything he does. A lot to do.
Is it just me, but is 11 years not a short lifespan?
Yes, ma'am. I agree with that statement. These are, like Scott said, they're not really a traditional type chiller. These chillers are sort of they were a new green type chiller. It's a very efficient chiller, but we have not had a lot of success with the compressor.
Were these those Samsung chillers that or the?
No, these are multi-stack chiller. It's the shaft actually levitates inside the compressor. It's being turned by magnets, and sort of new technology when we installed it, so we haven't had a lot of luck with them, I will say.
I am assuming that there are 6 compressors, that the 2 that were replaced under warranty are the 2 that are still working.
Maybe one of them is still, I think one of the other one, it was bad after the warranty period fell out with it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Dang.
Yeah, there's we'll need to regroup, but Scott actually brought to me the issue of a larger chiller replacement project in that facility, which was hundreds and hundreds of thousands. I mean, the cost of the larger project was very, very expensive. My thoughts are that what we know in the future in that building is that you've got 2 floors that are fully vacant. So you've got, and I think as we look to what those would be, you would probably go back to more traditional technology with the whole chiller replacement, but we weren't ready to tackle that now.
Another thing related to those, and my understanding was that those chillers were very modular, so they could be taken apart, moved in the existing freight elevator to the installation site, and we wouldn't have to modify the building in any way to bring the whole unit in together. So that was another reason, I think, behind selecting this particular chiller for that building.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you very much.
All right. Agenda item 14 is a resolution authorizing a quantum root payment to EBSCO Industries. Yolanda Bolden's going to review this one. And just for the board's understanding, those quantum root payments are payments where we're going back and saying, let's approve it. It's in last year's time frame because of some difficulties, but Yolanda can talk to that.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. This item for your consideration is a resolution authorizing payment for a contract with EBSCO Industries Incorporated for services rendered in fiscal year 2023. EBSCO provides resources used by our patrons for genealogy research, personalized book recommendations based on patrons' prior reading selections, and publishing and communication applications. Between turnover in the director's office, retirement of the deputy director, and the library business manager's recruitment to another county department, the current staff are filling in until these roles are filled, but in the meantime, the execution of this contract was missed. We do apologize for the oversight and request the Commissioner's authorization to pay EBSCO Industries, Inc. for services rendered through June 30th, 2023.
Two quick, short questions. I guess that number one is this a one-time payment a year? It's like a dues payment a year, so it's not like a monthly thing.
No.
So I can easily see how that part could have happened, particularly in the transition. And I'm assuming we're renewing this for FY '24.
Correct.
At the same time. So this is kind of the back payment issue for previous year and then a new payment. All right, sorry, got it. Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, for clarity, I think that there will be another EBSCO contract for fiscal year '24 in the next, maybe in your next cycle. So this is taking care of '23.
It's not part of this, it's coming, but it's
That's
coming up.
right.
It will be coming up, okay.
Be coming, yep. Thank you, Yolanda. Appreciate that. All right, item 15 is a resolution accepting the highest offer to purchase county-owned real property by negotiated offer advertisement upset bid procedure. It's a property on Carver School Road, and Kirby Robinson will review.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Board. I appreciate the opportunity to bring this item back to you. You may recall that Do Dreams, Inc. has offered to purchase about a half acre of county-owned real property, and that's located on Carver School Road. Their offer was for $20,000. The property was obtained through a tax foreclosure auction in 2017. Now, I'll just quickly note, because there was a little talk about foreclosure earlier, this was under the old way of tax foreclosure, where the tax office would actually enter a bid for the taxes owed at auction, which put the county at risk of owning real property. So we're actually almost through our surplus property pool because the tax office no longer does that, which is great. And we have one more surplus property after this. The property's tax value is $11,200. It's vacant and unimproved. We spend about $1,000 a year maintaining the property, just mowing. The bidder does intend to construct 2 homes on the property. So at your direction, after the May 18th meeting, we publicized the offer for advertisement upset bid, and we went through that advertisement process. We had interest on this property in the past, so we made sure too. We also reached out to previous folks who talked to us about it. The previous offer that we had received, actually that the board had considered a couple of years ago, was for $6,000. So you can see sort of where the real estate market affected that, and we did negotiate with this bidder to try and bring you the highest offer we could. No other offers were received. If you do desire to accept this offer, we'll execute a purchase contract and transfer the property to the bidder. And I'll just quickly note that this, of course, is your property, and as your agent in these transactions, I want to make sure I handle them the way that you would want me to. It's my understanding in the past that the board looked at surplus properties as revenue opportunities in a way to pay the taxes that the properties was foreclosed on. And so that's essentially what happens. Even though these taxes are not on the rolls anymore, that revenue essentially goes back into the fund that would theoretically have paid for those back taxes. So I'm happy to handle that differently if the board would like, but I want to make sure I touched on that. I didn't do a great job of explaining that last time. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
Well, it kind of goes into the general fund regardless, ultimately.
It does.
Well, I think I used to work in the tax office, 10 years ago, so I want to make John proud back there. But I think I just sort of say that because he collects from municipalities as well. So again, there would have been a municipality that he would theoretically have been collecting those taxes for. So again, I'm talking about things I don't know much about. I'm just simply saying that it was foreclosed on for taxes owed. And so that's why in the past we've looked at it as a potential revenue opportunity to try to make back.
Well, it's valued at $6,000, and we got $20,000 for it?
That was a previous offer the board received for $6,000, and I want to say that was in 2021, not terribly long ago, sir.
Sounds good to me. Any other questions?
All right. Thank you, Kirby.
Thank you, sir.
All right. We've got one appointment to the Forsyth Tech Community College Board of Trustees, so you'll see that in your packet. We've taken care of items 17, 18, and 19 around the tax administration, the annual settlement and the order to collect. You've got the 2023 contribution-based benefit cap report, and then you've got the upshot from the closed session on the compensation for the direct reports to the board. And so that is it for the agenda. The only thing I'll go back to is hip hop. If you want to do anything with that, essentially it's just a head nod if you're okay with the chairman authorizing a proclamation that can be taken to that event.
I think we have at least 4 of us if we need to take it to a vote.
Say that again, please, sorry.
I was saying if we needed to take it to a vote, I think we have 4.
Well, very good. I think the idea of a kind of, for my signature, which doesn't require action.
Right.
Basically.
That's correct.
I'd be glad to do that. It's good.
Okay, all right. So we've got some good marching orders on that. And then the last item,
I need to go get her.
okay. All right, so hurry up and do that. And then while you're doing that, I will talk. Okay. And hopefully say something.
Right there.
And so our own Rosalind Covington, who is an amazing person, and that's right, and the keeper of, I can't tell you how many people come in here to my office and say, that lady is amazing. She is so helpful, and she is just even for the angriest, weirdest person who ever comes in, Rosalind just always does a great job. But she has attained the prestigious Certified Municipal Clerk designation from the International Institute of Municipal Clerks.
Thank you so very much. It is a pleasure to work here with you guys, and it makes me strive to be the best because you guys are the best. So I'm only an extension of you guys.
We love you, Rosalind.
Congratulations, Rosalind.
Thank you so much.
All right, very good.
And it looks like you might have been a little surprised.
So I was told that the meeting was not streaming and everything was down. No one's phones was working. So of course I went, we got to fix this.
So you were lied to.
Nicely done, Chip. That's all I got to say.
So she was lied to, and I apologize. But
Well, I can see the look on your face. Congratulations. That's good.
Bless her.
All righty, we're ready to go. Stand adjourned.